Great sweater.
Grand Rising, welcome to Raan Oosha's interviews on the spiritual journey. Today I have Sanne with me from, she's in Bali at the moment, and we're going to speak about her life and where she is and what she's doing now. So Grand Rising, Sanne.
Hello, good to be here.
Sanne, could you just briefly tell us where you are and what you're doing now?
Yeah. You were saying already, I'm in Bali at the moment. I'm originally from the Netherlands. And I started to travel and leave, or I left the Netherlands 2 years ago, almost exact 2 years ago now, actually. I quit my job and I wanted to take a sabbatical, travel through Southeast Asia. So that's what I did in 2019. And since beginning of March of this year, I came to Bali, not knowing obviously that the pandemic would hit our world. But I was planning already to stay here for a few months, not this long, but I'm still here. And I extended also my sabbatical. It's 2 years now. And I work as a journalist and a media advisor. And most of my work is on the topic of media diversity and inclusion.
Thank you. I'll just read the beginning of a short bio that Sanne sent to me. I was raised a Christian, going to church every Sunday and attending Sunday school as a child and confirmation classes during my adolescence. I found the sermon in the church often interesting, especially when my favorite pastor was speaking. She always made a strong link between daily life and the biblical writing. The life lessons I got from those speeches were valuable. At the same time, I didn't really understand how we could learn about Jesus's life on Sunday and during the week we'll still gossip about other people or act in ways Jesus wouldn't. I guess I slowly started to realize that going to church is great, but the magic lies in applying the lessons in your daily life. So Sanne, it seems that from very early on, you found something incongruent with you from what you were hearing at church and life. Can you please go into that?
Yeah, I think because going to church was really part of our upbringing. And so it was really part of life. I think I only realized when I went to college, when I was 19, how strong our upbringing was actually with Christianity. Because then I started to talk with other people who weren't raised in a religious way, for example. And I mean, I was just used to praying for every meal and saying thank for after every meal, going to church every Sunday. So it was so intertwined with life already, doing these things. And then obviously when you go to church and you hear the sermons, it's a lot of time also about life, right? About, at least in our church, there was always a link with the global affairs or things happening in society and the world. So it just, it just was something that was there just from being a child. So it was like natural for me to have that incorporated in my life. And then what I wrote also in a short bio is I always was very, very interested in what was told to us in church. But I also started to, at some point, also notice like, okay, I want to do the good things, but so many people go to church every Sunday, but we also do still a lot of things that aren't good or not the things that we learn in church, right? To live a good life. So I started to value going to church less through that, because like I wrote also, I really felt like going to church is a really beautiful thing. It's a community thing. But the whole idea is obviously to apply the lessons you learn on Sunday in daily life and the rest of the week. So, yeah.
So what was your favorite pastor saying to you that you really kind of took hold of?
Yeah, I think she was just always, I think she was always just making the connection between daily life and the scriptures. So to me, I mean, our church was quite liberal, I would say, Protestant. And there were also communities, villages close to our village that would be much more orthodox, so to say. And I'm not sure if you use that word in English as well, but much more stricter. And I just really liked how she interpreted the Bible in a way that we could use the knowledge from such an old book into our daily lives. And that was always something that I really liked in her talks. And I mean, some pastors would also talk about the Bible and maybe also make that connection, but not as strong as she did. You know, sometimes a story in the church or a sermon would also be something that you couldn't really relate to. And I felt that always when she was preaching, there was always something in her sermon that I could really relate to in daily life. And I think that made just that she, was my favorite person. And she was in real life also a very, very friendly and soft character. And I always liked how she was so positive and not in a unrealistic way, but she was just, I felt like she was living the life that she was preaching also. And that was impressive to me. Yeah.
Did you speak to your parents about what your thoughts were about the church and what you're reading and how it was lived in daily life, or from what you saw people living?
Yeah, I think definitely we had some talks about that, but I also have to say this must have been in my high school years. It's also the years where you go out, you know, where you want to have fun, where you don't want to go to church anymore on Sunday morning because you've been partying till late at Saturday evening or Saturday night. So I mean, that's definitely also had an influence on stop going there, you know. But yeah, I mean, my parents are very, very open people, so I could discuss everything with them in that regard. I do think that they were a little bit disappointed also that me and also my older sister and later my younger sister decided not to continue going to church because they would have liked us to continue going there. But I mean, we always had good conversations about those things. And even without going to church, we still talk about life in a deeper way and, you know, life philosophy. And now being on this different spiritual path, I still share a lot with my parents about that as well. So, yeah.
So
Not everything, by the way, but I mean, yeah, we still have, I'm just thinking now, like, I do now Vipassana meditation and yoga. I mean, they are not connected to that at all. When I go to 10-day Vipassana, my mother thinks I'm going to, how to say, to a monastery, or she doesn't really understand what it is. And it's okay, you know, but I think from how I live my life and how when we talk about just daily life things and affairs in the world and how my view on these things is, if we talk about these things, we find each other in a kind of same life view, I would say, which is just, you know, be good to others and like the basic spiritual rules, I would say.
Is there a difference for you between religion and spirituality?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I think it's actually interesting because I was listening to the talk of Dr. Joseph Ben, and now I have to find his last name. I will do that. He's a chematologist or Egyptologist, Joseph Ben Jokanan. I never heard of him before, but I just read the book of Alicia Keys, and her book is called More Myself. And I love how she in her book really intertwines the spirituality with her career building and with activism also. But anyway, through her book, I came to see his talk on YouTube. And he actually says there's a difference between believing and knowing. And that's also where spirituality and religion differ. You know, sometimes I think when you believe in something, that is very much linked to religion, because you believe in a certain story that's been told in a holy scripture. That's how I would say it. Maybe not literally, like we were also not raised in church believing that everything in the Bible should be read literally, but yeah, at some point, I mean, you do believe in God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And there's a difference between believing and knowing. So, I mean, because even though you believe in God, you don't really know that he's there, right? I mean, in the end of the day, we just don't really know. So I think when you're very fixed on the idea of believing, that's what a lot of religious people have in common. Whereas I feel spirituality is more about knowing. And even though I do also from a spiritual view believe that there is, for example, reincarnation, I'm also quite down to earth in the sense that I also think, yeah, I don't really know it. So I would not like preach from a certain spiritual perspective that reincarnation exists. I think preaching something like that would be more part of a religion where you want to make people part of a certain movement, or whereas spirituality is more about, to me at least, more about knowing for yourself that there is more out there than just what we can see with our bare eyes, if that makes sense.
So how do you come to this knowing?
Yeah, I think for me, Vipassana meditation has been a huge, has been a huge help in this, because through Vipassana meditation, I was already doing yoga before I went on my first Vipassana meditation retreat. And yoga was actually for me the gateway to my body and my body awareness. So until I started doing yoga, I obviously did exercise when I was younger, etc. But moving the body and applying the yoga philosophy, so being aware of what is happening in your body and observing your inner landscape, was for me really the gateway to also becoming more aware of the energy in the body. I mean, the concept of energy was for me like hippy dippy, you know, when I was younger. I mean, when people would start talking about energy, I would be like, really, you know, like okay, well, I was just too, I don't know, I was totally not in tune with that. This was like before, or when I was younger than 25 or so. But when I started doing yoga, and after that also practicing Vipassana meditation, I became so aware of what was happening in my body and the energy flow, and also the knowledge that is taught in Vipassana is very much about how your body, first, in everything you experience in life, your body is the first thing before your mind that experiences that experience. And before it becomes a thought, it first is a feeling in your body. And so there's so much knowledge in our body that we are not even conscious of. And in Vipassana, you're constantly observing the sensations in your body. So you become very aware of the different things going on in your body. And that was for me just really a gateway also that was for me really a practice that made so much difference, because now I experienced myself that there was more out there than we could see with our bare eyes. Yeah.
Could you explain what is a Vipassana meditation?
Yeah, so Vipassana meditation, the one I do, because you also have different ones, the one I do is the one that's taught by Goenka. And Goenka is a businessman from Burma. He died, by the way, 7-8 years ago almost. And he was a businessman from Burma, from Myanmar. And he is the one who set up all the different meditation centers in the world to spread the Vipassana meditation over the world. So when he was a businessman, he suffered from migraine, and he traveled all around the world to find doctors who could heal him from that. And long story short, at the end of the day, he came back to Burma, and he was already taking heavy medicine. And then someone told him, you should try Vipassana meditation. And then he did that, and it worked for him. And then he discovered that this Vipassana meditation, which comes directly from the teachings of the Buddha, at least that's being said, was being preserved in Burma in a monastery in a very good way. So when he discovered that, he was like, oh, more people should know about this, because it's very, very helpful. So in Vipassana, you sit on your butt, like in meditation, and you observe. Actually, what you're doing is constantly scanning your body from top to toe and from toe to top. And it's kind of a body scan, but you observe the different sensations in your body. And so you do it on a more surface level, on the surface of your body, but also at some point more deeper. So you practice during a 10-day Vipassana. You practice also the mind in becoming more and more subtle. So you will be also open to more subtle sensations in your body as well. And the whole idea of Vipassana is to, once you observe a sensation in your body, to stay equanimous when you observe that, and not to respond to the sensation, but stay as an observer in meditation, and just also observe how this sensation comes and also goes. So the whole idea of Vipassana is you get an understanding of how the law of nature works, because everything in life comes and goes. So nothing is permanent. And through observing the sensations in your body, you get a really good bodily understanding of that concept. Because, for example, if a mosquito bites you in your arm and you want to scratch, that's also happening in Vipassana. You know, sometimes there are mosquitoes, or sometimes you just, I mean, we get sensations in our body all the time. Sometimes you have an itch somewhere, and the first thing you want to do is like scratch or touch it or so. And in Vipassana, you learn to create a distance between the sensation arising and you responding to it. And by doing that, you train your mind in becoming more equanimous. And the interesting thing is, once you don't respond to a sensation, you will notice that a sensation will leave also without you doing anything. So, I mean, you could try it with a mosquito bite back home. I'm very much about the mosquito bites because it's rainy season in Bali and I have so many now. But yeah, you could try it. When a mosquito bites you, just don't respond and just wait till the sensation also leaves your body again. And yeah, that gives you a really good understanding of how the law of nature works with things in life coming and going. And I say good understanding because I really believe that because you experience it through your own body, it becomes really your truth. And that's also what is taught in Vipassana, that there are different levels of knowledge. And you can get knowledge through books, through what other people tell you, but also your own experience. And you need these three types of knowledge to make your own truth. So, yeah.
What did you find the most challenging, the physical or the emotional or mental things you had to go through while you were doing the Vipassana?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so I did it 4 times now. I think I think I have an easy answer to that, because when I tell people that I'm a Vipassana meditator, they immediately say, "Oh yeah, I also want to do that once in my life." But Vipassana is not for once in your life. So, I mean, I would recommend everybody to do a 10-day meditation, 10-day Vipassana. I did 4 10 days now, and all the 4 are very different experiences. But I think the most challenging is to keep up the daily practice. So when you leave, I mean, the 10-day is really a beautiful experience, just because you're in a safe space. You get to meditate 10 hours a day. You obviously go to hard times emotionally and physically. But the real challenge starts when you leave the 10 days and then start your daily practice. Because in Vipassana, they actually want you to meditate 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. And even I did that for quite a while, I think for, yeah, maybe a year or so. I'm also not now at this moment not meditating an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. I do meditate maybe about an hour a day, but maybe half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, or sometimes 1 hour in one of these times a day. So I think the biggest challenge of meditation in general is to just keep up the daily practice, because it's all about the daily practice and not so much about a 10-day experience.
So what does meditation mean to you?
Yeah, my first answer would be to calm the mind. But I think meditation to me really also means training the mind into becoming more equanimous. So that you're, I mean, we go in our emotions from high to low. That's very normal, I think, being human beings. And meditation makes the lows less low for me, and the highs also less high, which is also a good thing. So yeah, meditation for me is really about making the mind more balanced and train the mind to become more equanimous.
So is it something that you have to do sitting down with a particular time, or can it be something that you incorporate into activities in your life?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I sometimes hear people say, "Oh yeah, playing the guitar is really meditation for me," or "Oh, running is really meditation for me." And I do exactly get what they're saying. I think what they mean at that moment is you do a certain activity and you're not so much thinking anymore, right? This creativity or this exercise just maybe takes over your brain a little bit, and you're just having this nice feeling of not having to think so much. That's at least what I guess that people mean by that. But to me, real meditation is really about sitting up straight. So I'm not saying that you need to sit in lotus or whatever, because there are a lot of people who can't even sit. So you can also sit on your chair. But for me, the important part is that you sit up straight, in a sense that the energy can go up and down your spine, because the spine is very important in meditation. And what I experienced myself also in Vipassana is that the energy comes through your head in your body, and leaves also in this place. So I had very strong experiences also in Vipassana, where sensations in my body that were very heavy left through my spine. I would just feel them going through my spine. Sounds a little bit weird, I can imagine, but yeah, that's my experience. Through my spine, up through the head and out of the body. So and that is also the way it should go. That's I checked that also with my teacher. Is this the way it should go? Yes, this is the way it should go. But yeah, so for me, meditation is really about sitting up with a straight spine. So it can be on a chair, it can even be maybe standing, but it's not so comfortable. And I'm not saying that you should do it for a certain amount of time. What I like about Vipassana, for example, is it's really it doesn't really have rules in that sense. It's not about certain mantras you have to say, or certain words or certain time. I think the most important is that you start with observing your breath, and from there slowly go to observing your whole body, and then also observing the energy in your spine. And if it's 5 minutes for you every day, you probably have a less deep experience than when you sit for 1 hour. But just go with what you can handle at this moment, and that's most important. And it's also more important to do every day a little bit than just once a week, 1 hour or so.
Does the energy going up your spine have anything to do with when we hear about chakras?
Yeah, I think so, because the chakras are also aligned with the spine, right? So the root of the chakra is also, of most chakras, yeah, I think, yeah, most chakras, not all of them, are connected to the spine. So definitely, that has definitely to do with it. I think I'm not an expert I did chakra meditation also. I did yoga teacher trainings. I had definitely my bit of study about the chakras. I am just not so, how to say, knowledgeable about how that all intertwines. For me, I have this kind of general picture of how it makes sense. And I definitely believe that chakras, first of all, exist, and they're important energy centers, and they're definitely connected to the spine as well. Yeah.
You said before about Vipassana training the mind.
Yeah.
Then we hear lots of meditation of there being no mind. So how does that come together?
What do you mean by no mind?
So we are the ones who observe the mind and the sense of me.
Yeah.
And then, but in Vipassana, you're actually training the mind.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
So, but you still can be the observer of your own mind, right? But the mind, and in our daily behavior, the mind easily takes over, and it's even though through spirituality we learn that we are ourself is something that is the observer, and the mind is not ourself. Like, we don't have to identify with everything we think, because it's not everything you think is not necessarily who you are. So I really like that concept also. When I first heard of that, I was like almost liberating, to be able to see that as separate. But we often obviously become victims of our mind, right? Through everything we experience in life, through our through the people who raised us, to the people who were in our lives from a young age. So I think what you do in meditation, and not just Vipassana, but I think in spiritual practice in general, that you learn to control your mind in a certain way that it acts more like you really want it to act, and that you're not a victim of your mind. That's how I would think of describing it.
So then you became a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
So how did your practice with Vipassana come together with your yoga teaching?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I worked in media. I work in media for since my 25th, so 16 years now. And actually I started yoga as a hobby because I felt at some point when I was 30, my job was so demanding, and I just figured I need a hobby. Because it's good to just not work 24/7. So it could have been also studying Spanish or so, but at that moment I was going to the gym for a yoga class, and I really had a really nice teacher. And so she was actually my first introduction to yoga. And then I started to do a yoga teacher training because I thought, oh, this can be my hobby, to study yoga philosophy. And then she was already doing Vipassana. I think my teacher at that moment, she did her first Vipassana. And she was very enthusiastic about that. So it was already in my mind, like, okay, when I finish my teacher training, I definitely want to do Vipassana at some point. But my teacher training Vipassana was not part of the meditation philosophy that I learned in my teacher trainings. So I was saying before, I did chakra meditation also when I studied with Paul and Susie Grilly in the US, who are most amazing yoga teachers, very, very knowledgeable. I love their teacher trainings. But the chakra meditation just didn't really speak to me. And at that point, I had done one Vipassana meditation, and I really liked Vipassana. But I remember Paul Grilly was not a fan of Vipassana. So he found it too strict or so. And I was thinking, oh yeah, well, my yoga teacher doesn't like Vipassana, but I like it, So, but I learned through him also that you just need to find something that suits you, because Vipassana is also not for everyone. And then a few years later, I did a yoga retreat with Sarah Powers, who is also quite a famous yoga teacher in the US. And I remember that she was telling us, and at the first day it was not really a retreat, it was more a workshop of 5 days. And I really remember very, very clearly that she was telling us at the first day, she said, in the life of, in the spiritual world where we all are in, like as yogis, as yoga teachers, as meditation practitioners, as people who book a retreat for holiday or whatever, she said, it's so easy to hop from one experience to the other. To go from this Vinyasa yoga teacher training to Ashtanga, to this meditation, chakra meditation, to Vipassana, and back to whatever, to try all these different things out. But she said it's very important also that you at some point pick one and go deeper into that one practice that speaks to you. And instead of orientating yourself horizontally, where you stay with all these different experiences kind of on the surface also, try to just pick one and go vertically deeper and just stick with that practice for a few years. And that was actually the moment when I decided I really like Vipassana, and I want to do more of the 10-day Vipassana. And also there's a whole program in Vipassana also. When you do a certain amount of 10 days, you can maybe apply for 20 days also. There are programs of 3 and 9 days that deepen the knowledge. So yeah, that's the moment when I decided for myself, I want to stick with Vipassana for the coming years.
We see so many different kinds of yoga. I mean, there are hundreds of teachers now. So
Yeah.
what are the kind of the core concepts, the real spiritual values of yoga?
Yeah. Yeah, especially also when you're staying in Bali like I am. Oh God, it's so funny. I think a lot about that because I'm staying in Ubud also, which is kind of the spiritual center of the world. And there's so much going on here, but there's also so much talking about spirituality that doesn't really connect with how I view it. But that's maybe for a different episode. I think, yeah, there's maybe one funny anecdote. A friend of mine who I met last year in Bali, but I ran into him a few months ago, like 4 or 5 months ago or so. And he said, yeah, I'm doing a yoga teacher training now. And I said, oh, that's great. So what are you learning? You know, like, that's awesome, like, great. And then at some point in our conversation, we were talking about the ethics of yoga. And he said, luckily, in my yoga, there are no ethics. So I'm very happy with that. And I was like, in your yoga are no ethics? The base of yoga are the ethics, you know, like the yama and the niyama is like, yoga is funny. Yoga is cool for all the different postures we learn, but yoga really is about how you treat other people in the world. First, also, of course, yourself and being good to yourself. But it's like the eightfold path of yoga. I mean, the number 3 are the asanas, but all the other 7 are about ethics and meditation and training your mind, etc. So, but ethics really is the foundation. And I think that in the spiritual community, we don't talk in the yoga community, let me put it like that, we don't talk enough about ethics. And I think that's really so important. If you want to start with yoga or you're practicing yoga now, just go back to the root of what yoga philosophy is. And the root is really in the ethics. And one more example that I want to mention here is the Black Lives Matter protests of last year. When that happened, I'm still part of a lot of yoga Facebook groups. And when Black Lives Matter happened, you saw a whole spiritual community saying, all life matters, you know. I just get goosebumps when I mention it. Because there was suddenly a whole discussion in yoga that I say goosebumps because for me, all life matters is just, you know, when you say something like that in the Black Lives Matter protest, you just don't really understand the whole issue. And it happened to be a big part of the spiritual community that would say that, which also meant that a big part of the yoga community didn't really understand the issue of racism in our world. Whereas if you practice yoga and you practice meditation, you cannot be apart from social justice. That's at least how I see it. That makes complete sense to me. And there were some yoga teachers also with different cultural backgrounds, or Black yoga teachers, who experienced that their followers, their students, didn't understand the whole issue. And what happened was these teachers became very mad and said, please don't follow me anymore if you don't understand the issue. Whereas I was thinking, but if you have a whole group of followers who doesn't understand the Black Lives Matters movement, then you as a teacher also should ask yourself, how much attention did you pay in your teacher training on the ethics of the profession, you know? So for me, the whole discussion in the yoga community at that time, where a lot of people got very high in their emotion because you just want to be good for the world and you don't want there to be racism, this kind of approach. But at the same time, not acknowledging that we have a really big problem in the world was for me really an example of how we don't discuss ethics enough in the yoga community.
So where did you go from there? I mean, being part of the practice and seeing that so many in the spiritual community were not able to acknowledge that racism even exists.
Yeah.
And maybe a lack of, not a lot of teachers from diverse backgrounds who you don't really get to see. So where did you go with that afterwards?
So, yeah, so in my work, I focus a lot on diversity and inclusion, but mostly on the group of people who work in media, so journalists. And there's actually kind of the same issue, because media diversity has already been talked about since the beginning of my career, and even before that, for decades already, and not so much has changed throughout the years. And where it really comes down to what I experienced myself, because I worked in a multicultural media organization for a long time, and I got very much aware. I became very much aware of my own prejudices and biases, being a white woman in a multicultural environment. And what I see in journalism, for example, is a lot of white journalists are just not aware of are not always aware of their own biases and prejudices, but they also are not always willing to do the self-reflection that is needed to really understand racism. And when you're a person of color or a Black person, you experience racism maybe on a daily basis, but when you're white, you don't. So you need to do something with the blind spots you have, and you need to be also willing to work on that. But if you don't do that, then not much will change. So what I now do in my work for journalists is to share how I became aware of that throughout the years, and also tell people that white journalists now need to do the work also. We cannot look at other people to change or whatever. It needs to come from the culture of white people. That's what I really believe. And I think even saying constantly white doesn't really cover the whole topic, because I think it has a lot to do also with growing up in a Western society. But I do think that being white is gives you a huge responsibility in this issue. And then for the spiritual world, I was having a chat with Michael Franti, who is an American musician. He has a retreat center here in Bali, where I went for a coffee one day. And he's a cool guy. I went to his concert when I was 22 or so in Amsterdam. So it was kind of cool to see him here. And he and his wife are organizing yoga retreats already for years. And I talked with them also about the Black Lives Matter protest. And they were also kind of shocked, about their followers. And they told me that they would definitely address this topic more in the retreats they're going to organize in the future. So I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of people, and I hope that it will continue being so. And when I write for journalism about inclusion, but for me, diversity inclusion is definitely intertwined with spirituality as well. So I try to bring these things also together in my writings, and that's how I hope to contribute on this topic.
What kind of feedback are you getting when you're speaking about it? Are people giving you feedback, or not just reading what you do or not acknowledging it? What's the response that you're getting when you raise these issues?
It differs. I think in the beginning, when also around the Black Lives Matter protests this year, because I'm on this topic already for a lot of years, and 5 years ago or so, I was quite activist, also publishing a lot in the Netherlands about this, about the topic. But then I think the tone that I had at that moment didn't really suit my position. So I was more in the kind of white savior mode, that I wanted to rescue all the Black people, which is not a solution. So I went through different stages. At that time, it felt very good to publish about it and to get a response of people, but it also felt too negative. And at that moment, I also got from people of color, I got also response like, hey, you don't need to save us, you know, which was really confusing for me at that time, because I thought, what do you mean? You know, I'm just doing my best to try and make the world a better place. So it made me also mute my voice for a few years, because I really didn't know how to contribute. And I think since 2 or 3 years, I gained more knowledge, and I know much better what my position in the whole debate is. And that is to focus really on people of my own skin color, because I know the transformation I went through on this topic. And that's where I also can be of value for other people. And I see it very clearly now. So I'm very happy with that. But what I now get as response is sometimes from white people saying, you're always talking about this topic, or you're so how to say, activist on this topic. And then from Black people and Black friends of mine, they say like, hey, Sanne, this is the way to go. Thanks for your support. You know, or even a journalist colleague from Singapore who also told me that he's most of the time the only Asian journalist in European media conferences. I interviewed him about that, and after our Zoom call, he also told me, thanks for being an ally in this. So, and that makes me happy, because when I hear that, I feel like, yeah, I'm on a good path, and I don't need to hear all the time, you're a good ally. That's also what I understand. That's not what it's about, you know, but I really feel that it's such an important topic that needs to be repeated all the time, because we jump from one issue to the other in the world. And if we don't repeat this all the time and focus on the root of the issue, then it gets easily forgotten. And I wish that, I mean, there are a lot of white people already who raise this topic, but we need many more people who do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I thought it would have been, especially in a spiritual community, it will be something that will be more open and more spoken about. But yeah, it's something that I've never really heard spoken about. And so what do you think is this barrier, this stopping people from speaking about this? What is it, do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I talk about your previous question, I really talk about how it's perceived in media and the journalism world mostly, and amongst my friends, whom, yeah, a lot of people also work in that field. But the spiritual community is completely different. So there still is, I think it's really a lack of knowing the ethics. There still is a very big feeling of we're all equal, you know? And so like, we acknowledge racism, but in the end of the day, it shouldn't be about color. So actually kind of still the same response as that we saw around Black Lives Matters. And I think, how to say, yeah, I think it's really, it also has to do with what we were talking about before, that spirituality should be part of your daily life. You know, you don't practice spirituality to go on a retreat every year, or to tell your friends how spiritual you are. Spirituality should be something that you use in your acting every day and every moment of your life. And for me, it's a no-brainer that when you are doing the right thing in following your spiritual guidance, that social justice is part of that, and wanting to make the world a better place. And what I see in spiritual communities is a lot of times everybody talks about they want to leave the system, but at the same time, they're not realizing that they're still part of the system, and that if you want to change something, it's not just the universe that can help you, but also the political system that we live in. And that's actually something I think that is not always realized. And I know that politicians, the system, to say like the political system, there's a lot of corruption, even in the Western countries. I totally get that there's a lack of trust of people, but I think you need to understand that at some point, we need a certain common ground in this world where we can build our societies upon. And even though that you are a spiritual person and I'm a spiritual person, even though I'm very fond of Vipassana, I'm not going to convert everybody to Vipassana. I don't think that makes any sense. I keep that for my private practice to become a good person. But I also understand that there are so many different people out there. So to have a certain common ground so that we can live next to each other in society and make sure that we all have a good life, that's where ethics come in, basic human rights and a political system. And we need that to get our societies going. I mean, you cannot live without that. And that's sometimes what I think when a lot of people in Ubud, for example, also say, yeah, I left the system, I'm free now. But you still have probably your passport, or you still return to your home country when shit hits the fan. So you're not really, I mean, I'm okay with people living that life because it's also a lifestyle. So don't get me wrong, but don't say that you left the system. And please also take still responsibility to vote and make the world better, not just for yourself, but also for a lot of people who suffer from the inequality that we created. So that's how I see it.
How can we bridge spirituality and this sense of justice for all beings?
Mm-hmm.
How can we take that path?
Yeah, I think that's a very hard question. But I do think that when you become more spiritual, it shouldn't be that you withdraw from society, Use your spirituality to be of use in your society. And being of use in society also means that you at least use your right to vote, but also contribute to your community. And I think that's where the bridge is. So that's not even so very complicated for me, actually. If I think about it, for me, it makes sense that this is also what true spirituality is. It starts with working on yourself, working on the things, your traumas, all the things that bother you in life, or that let's say that inhibit you from becoming the person you really are, your true self. But often the next step seems to be forgotten, that you use that knowledge and that self-development to empower yourself to then contribute through the people around you, being it your small community, your society. And I think that's where the political system and spirituality also come together. Spirituality is not about withdrawing yourself from society. It's about being aware of what is happening and then training your mind to take very conscious action to make things better. That's how I see it.
I like what you said there about building a community, because then with the community, then we'll look at injustice or things that are not correct. They'll be part of our community and we will instinctively want to look at them and help them and have the justice for all people once you have that community.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a kind of separation in spirituality at the moment, that people are in different fields, which is why we don't have a sense of community?
Yeah, so what I'm feeling is that people, that if we nowadays talk about spirituality, we really talk about one part of spirituality, which is a very important first part, like self-development. You know, all the self-help books that have been written, all the talks about how important it is for me to do my yoga class, for me to do my meditation practice, that I feel good. You know, it's a lot of talking is about me and I, and which is, as I say, it's a good start, and it's beautiful that more and more people around the world get more awareness about who they are, because that's still, I think, beautiful that that's happening, because it's very necessary too. But I think we need to not forget that after that there's a next step. And what I see now is that it seems that we are a little bit stuck in the self-development mode. And I even see in Bali, actually, to be honest, that it becomes a whole industry also, you know, from people who try different spiritual practices, which is also fine when you want to orientate yourself. But like Sarah Powers told me at that time, at some point, just stick with one and try to deepen your knowledge, which also means that it's not only fun, right? It's not just continuous practice becomes really more work almost, but that's where it's getting very interesting as well. And there's also a whole industry of yoga teachers, coaches also in Bali. And I actually was saying to a friend this morning, when I had coffee with her, you know her very well too, Manu. Because I had a few chats with women this week, and they shared with me how their experiences with coaches. And I was saying to Manu, it seems that a lot of people who are in the spiritual industry at this time are looking for the most vulnerable people out there to coach them or to give them a healing or whatever, and not to empower those people, but to just make them come back and buy more and buy another session and come back to my class. And it's not so much about genuinely wanting to help people, but it seems to be almost more the business model that is running the help industry now. And of course, everybody needs to make money, but it shouldn't be the first. What I notice is that this seems to create a certain dependence between healers and people who want to be healed. And that's never a healthy, how to say, relationship. If you want to help someone, you should help this person in becoming strong, and not helping this person in becoming dependent on you. And so we need to break through that cycle. And there are a lot of people who are aware of that and wanting to do different things. So different approach.
Because it can be quite off-putting sometimes, I think, when you speak to someone and they're selling you a course, or they're selling you a retreat, or they're selling you a practice. And, you know, it's so much. And of course, they're in a position of teacher sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it seems to take away a lot of maybe some power from the individual. Mm-hmm. Because they're being sold stuff, and it's become like a business in some places, not all places, of course, but a business.
Yeah, but spirituality, of course, has become a business already for quite many years. I think it was also Sarah Powers who coined the term spiritual marketing. You know, it's when you're in your yoga class, I mean, do you wear the right pants? Do you have a nice top? You know, what mat do you have? Which retreat do you go to? I mean, it makes sense. We're all human beings, but it's also good to be aware of these things. And not to say that you shouldn't wear nice pants. I also invested in good yoga pants, but you shouldn't, it's all about attachment, right? You shouldn't get attached to these things. So yeah, that's most important. And when we talk about attachment, it actually also still comes down to the ethics of what spirituality and yoga is. And if we would discuss the ethics a little bit more, I think that would be very helpful, to not just organize cacao ceremonies and yoga classes, but also organize meetings where we discuss the ethics of spirituality. I'm not sure if that's been done at this moment. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Sanne. I think we'll leave it there for today. It's been really interesting to speak about this, and I think to devote another time to going into more of the ethics and what you're doing will be to do that at another time, to devote a whole hour to do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about this topic. So yeah, I'm happy to do that again.
Thank you very much. So thank you to Sanne, and thank you for coming to Raan Oosha's spiritual journey today with Sanne. Sanne, is there any way that we can reach you if anybody wants to speak to you?
So yeah, I do a lot with not a lot, but most of the things I do publicly is now through Medium. I write articles, but also an Instagram account, if that's easy. So it's my name, Sanne Breimer. Maybe you can put it somewhere in the video. Yeah, and I'm very easily reached through Instagram, so through private messages, and I have also a website which is called inclusivejournalism.com. So you can also write a email to that.
So, well, thank you very much. Thank you for doing the interview, Sanne.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was great. Okay.